of April 20th, 2023. They're in your packet.
Motion to approve.
We have a motion to approve. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any questions or discussion or changes to the minutes? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passed on minutes for April 20th, 2023. First on the public hearing of Plan Commission items tonight is City of Elkhorn Tax Incremental District, TID number 4, proposed project plan amendment and boundary adjustment. Project plan amendment and public hearing and recommendation. I'll open the public hearing. Is anybody here for the public hearing on the TID number 4? I'll ask a second time. Is anybody here for the public hearing? I'll ask a third time. Is anybody here for the public hearing on TID number 4?
Mayor, Joe Murray is here if you want Joe to.
Do you need to, would you like to speak, Joe?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Excuse me, Joe Murray from Ellers, proud to be the city's financial advisor. I was prepared to go through the project plan. Maybe if I go through it, maybe that might spur some public interest and comments about some of the things that are included in the plan. I've asked Matt to put up on the screen just to orient you where TID number 4 is. It's kind of a bow tie shaped TID district located on both the north and south side of the intersection of 67 and Highway 43. I think everybody, it's a stone's throw from here, so I think everybody's probably pretty familiar with where it is. I understand you all have a copy of the project plan that was sent out to you, included electronically in your packets. I'll try to go through this quickly, but TID District number 4 was created on July 10th of 2017 as a mixed-use tax incremental district. It was created to help foster commercial and industrial development. As you're familiar, the south side is where the development has occurred today. That includes the Low Travel Plaza, the Holiday Inn Hotel and Suites, and some other things on the south side. The development on the north side has been lagging over the years. The city has been approached by a new developer to try to develop the northern area. That area that includes the yellow parts that you see there, as well as the red along 67, for a commercial and residential development. The proposed residential development is Creekside Community Development, which addresses 49 acres, includes multi-family residential and 21 acres of new commercial along 67. The project plan and boundary amendment is to revise the plan to reflect the introduction of residential. As I said before, when TID 4 was created, it was for industrial and commercial. This is a change from those uses. We thought that was a big enough change that it would require a project plan amendment. It also amends the boundary to include those 5 purple colored parcels along 67, which is the bus depot right now, to be included as part of it. The developer, Toronto, proposes the construction of 159 senior housing units and 689 apartments for a total of 848 units on a 48-acre site. The original project plan was noted as containing approximately 141 acres, but it did not include any of the right-of-way or I-43 or the Department of Motor Vehicle building. That's that blue building on the south end of the yellow you see on the map. Why it wasn't included back in 2017, I can't tell you. But this plan amendment does reflect the inclusion of that, as well as some city right-of-way, to increase the size of the district to roughly 238 acres. The estimated project cost associated with the project plan include $20 million in project cost to be undertaken. This includes $3.1 million in debt service for the city's already issued debt associated on the south side development. The city issued $3.1 million back in 2018 and another $5.2 million in 2018 as well, as general obligation debt to put in the infrastructure to spur that development on that side. There's also, as part of this new proposed development for Creekside, $11.7 million in developer grants, as well as $81,000 in administrative costs. When the plan was originally created and district was created back in 2017, the project costs were projected at just over $17 million. The city projects that the land and improvements for the entire district will be $145.1 million as a result of all the improvements. This includes the $13.2 million of existing improvement on the south side that's already been developed, as well as an additional $132.2 from the Creekside development on the north side. The projected project plan for 2017 had only expected $46.5 million development, so this is essentially 3 times the size of what was anticipated back in 2017. Doing the economic feasibility analysis as part of the project and is included in the plan in Section 9, we project that the district will generate sufficient tax increment to pay all the project costs within 18 of its 20 years of maximum life. So we're expecting the district would be able to close in 2036. The summary of findings are the main points that need to be held and approved by the council as well as the joint review board, and also as part of your recommendation. The first important finding is the but-for test, and that means that but for the creation of this TID, that this development would not happen, or that it would not happen in the manner, time, or values that the city desires. The developer has approached the city. If you're familiar with the yellow parcel, you know it's has access only on 67, and on the north end of the parcel, it's bounded by the railroad tracks. And it's as part of the plan development, the goal is to get approval from the railroad to put a crossing on the northern end there, where Matt's kind of moving his cursor, so that there would be at least 2 access points to this site. Number 2, that the economic development of the district is measured by employment, business, and personal income and property value are sufficient to compensate the cost of the improvements. I'll talk about the cost assumptions as we get further, or if you'd like to ask more questions about it. There's also the secondary benefit anticipated that the development of this type will, during construction, will obviously be hopefully purchasing and hiring locally, but with the addition of 850 residential units, that would provide additional residence for customers for all the city service, retail and other opportunities and operations as well. Number 3, that the benefits of the proposal outweigh the anticipated tax increments to be paid by the owners of the overlying taxing jurisdictions. If you're familiar with TID, what happens is that once it's created, the city will capture all the incremental tax revenue that would be generated by all 5 of the taxing jurisdictions. You would be collecting the cities, the counties, the school districts, the technical colleges. Their tax rates and levies for any incremental revenue will be going to the TID to help pay for the project costs associated with it. But it's important to keep in mind that, back to the but-for test, that but for the creation of this TID, this development wouldn't happen. So it's not being paid, it's just that they are foregoing the collection of those revenues during the term of the TID. Number 4, not less than 50% of the area within the district as amended is suitable for mixed-use development. We're projecting that roughly 68% of the district will be suitable for mixed-use development. That's residential and commercial. The other key test of a mixed-use development when it's including residential is that no more than 35% of the area can be newly platted residential land, and that any of that newly platted residential has to have a density of at least 3 acres or 3 units per acre. We are projecting that 22% of the area will be in the newly platted residential as part of the project. Number 5, based on meeting those tests, it does comply and is qualified to be a mixed-use district. Number 6, that the project costs associated with the project within the TID will help promote its purpose of mixed-use development. Number 7, improvements to be made in the district are likely to significantly enhance the value of substantially all the other real property within the district, so everything around it hopefully will also see a bump in value. And number 8, the equalized value test is the city cannot have more than 12% of its existing TIDs plus the base of this TID be more than 12% of your equalized value. And I'll get into you are well underneath your 12% test, so that qualification is met. The plan is feasible and it does conform with the city's master plan. Number 10, the city estimates that roughly 35% of the territory when this district is completed will have retail development on it. That's a note we need to provide to the DOR. And number 11, we need to know that none of the area being included has been recently annexed into the city, or else you would have to be paying to the township for the next 5 years their lost tax revenue associated by the land. I'll go through some of the pages quickly, and if you have questions, please feel free to ask. If you go to page 12 of the report, the project plan, the value of the incremental revenue as well as the base will total roughly $14.4 million. That's $112 million less than your 12% test, so you still have plenty of capacity for any future TID work that you might want to have. Section 6, starting on page 13, this is I call it the kitchen sink of all the eligible potential project costs. Just because it's listed in the plan doesn't mean that you're going to do them. I had another client recently ask me, one of them says on page 18, a rail spur. There's no plan to put in a rail spur, but if you wanted to, it would be a TID eligible expense, and so we put it in there just to make sure. The one I want to highlight starts on page 17. These are the cash grants to the developer. The proposal at this time and what's reflected in the plan is that the city would provide the developer 50% of the annual incremental revenue generated by that development. We're projecting over the life of the TID from revenues collected in 2025 through 2038 that would generate roughly $11.7 million of revenue being able to go back to the developer. The proposal also in the project plan reflects that it would be done on a pay-as-you-go basis, meaning, and that a fancy word for that's reflected in the plan is something called the municipal revenue obligation, or an MRO. What that means is that the city will make an obligation that they will give back that 50% of the annual incremental revenue back to the developer as part of the project. If the development comes in and develops at a higher value, the developer will get their money faster. If the developer underperforms and doesn't generate the revenues of values that are reflected in the plan, they will not get the full $11.7 million. So that's something to keep in mind, and that's the most reduces the risk as much as possible to the city as part of the project. On page 22, here's the project cost. The first phase 1 in 2018, that's all the development that was done on the south side. Yesterday, we presented this to the Joint Review Board, the other members of overlying taxing jurisdictions. They would like to see this table expanded to break out further the actual expenditure costs for phase 1. I haven't reflected as to what the debt was issued, but they asked for a little bit more detail. And we'll be working with the city to try to get that to make them satisfied. But as you see in phase 2 for 2023, that's the $11.7 million municipal revenue obligation for Creekside, is that 50% of the incremental revenue that I just talked about. Going to page 24, here are the development assumptions. It's expected that Creekside will generate roughly $132 million of additional incremental revenue. It's expected that they would begin construction in 2023 and have build out going out through 2030 to get to that total of $132 million. Page 25 shows what the incremental projections are associated with it by increasing the, based on what's existing out there, as well as the additional $132 million, we expect that TID number 4 will generate over $27.5 million of total incremental revenue. Page 26 is the financing and implementation plan. I've already talked about the MRO. The Joint Review Board, however, had questions yesterday. They found something in the original project plan that they wanted further specified, basically to state that other revenues that are collected by the city, such as a utility connection, special assessment revenue associated within the TID, that revenue would go back to the TID and wouldn't be going to the other city operations. And that is a requirement by statute, but the Joint Review Board wanted to have language included to reflect that. I think the most important thing to highlight is on page 28. This is the cash flow for the district. The orange columns are the projected revenues. That, as I said, reflects the existing value that's on the south side, as well as the additional $132 million from Creekside. The first two sets of columns in green are that's the existing outstanding debt that the city issued for back in 2018 for the south side development. And then the third green box is that municipal revenue obligation, saying that the 50% of the increment would go back to Creekside, and that would generate for them $11.7 million. So I would be, if there's more questions, I'd be happy to answer them or get into more detail, but I'm told that I'm going to try to keep it quick.
Joe, since it's public hearing, I'm gonna ask anybody else for public hearing, and then I'll close public hearing, and then if commission members have any questions, I'll call you back up, okay? Anybody else for public hearing? Since that was the third public hearing, I declare public hearing closed for the Elkhorn Tax Increment District number 4. Commission members, you have questions for Joe?
Yes.
Joe, if you could come back up.
What kind of green space do we have for kids to play in that area? And what's the impact that's going to be on our school district?
That I cannot speak to. I believe Matt has a site plan that he might be able to show. I am not a planner. I am the city's financial advisor to review the financial aspects of it. I do not represent the developer in any way, shape, or form. I'm just reviewing this on the city's behalf, so I cannot speak to those items. I can say that at the Joint Review Board that the school district was happy and excited about the opportunity of having more residential units to bring in opportunity to have more children coming into the school district. They seem very pleased. So the technical college.
Yeah, and I can tell you that they said that they welcome the opportunity to have more housing available for teachers. That's been a big issue for teachers, is finding housing. They don't think that, they've talked to some of the other cities, East Troy, for example, which has a autonomy development. And they've talked to some of those other school districts, and they haven't found that the impact on the school enrollment has been significant. So the school is not concerned that they would have to build, let's say, another elementary school or anything like that. I think they can actually, serve their schools, with the schools they have and be able to service this development. They pointed out that the number of kids continues to decline in terms of in the city. Obviously, they're doing a lot of optional enrollment outside the city, but just because of household family sizes continue to go down, so the number of kids per house goes down. So they're not concerned about the impact on the schools from a number of pupils. So they support it.
So, are we talking East Troy or Elkhorn?
I'm saying our school district has talked to other school districts who have had autonomy development apartments and talked about the impact that those cities have seen from these apartments, and they haven't seen a large influx of school-age children in the schools.
So we haven't talked with anyone in Elkhorn about this?
No, I'd say,
All right.
yes, the school district superintendent, Jason Tadlock, is one of the members of the Joint Review Board. And these are the things that he talked about yesterday in our meeting as to why the school district supports it from a financial perspective. They support it because, yes, it will bring some more children, but not any significant number of children that they see. In fact, they said now if this was going to be in a different zone, like if this was up by Tibbetts Elementary, they'd have concerns because that Tibbetts is full right now, but for I think Jackson Elementary is in that area, is in this area, they're not concerned about the size.
Just one thing, commission members, remember this did already go through us, through Autonomy, and we did pass to move on. That's why we're at this point, to get to this taxing district. So, I mean, we did already approve their project, so.
In terms of, I don't know, in terms of green space questions, Autonomy is here. If they want to say anything, I guess I'll defer to the mayor.
I mean, if you could make it quick, because like I said, we already did approve it. Sure, go ahead. If you want to.
Malcolm, I'm engineer on the project for Toronto Builders, Creekside. Question in regards to the school children's and most of the school funding now comes from per student, so we saw a lot of support in East Troy from the school district because although they do add some students, it's not what you think. That most the tenants are professionals and some have students, but they don't have near the impact of some single-family housing developments do. So most of the 20 years ago, a lot of the school districts would object to these type of projects. Now I haven't heard a school district object to this since they've changed the funding at the state level.
I guess the only question I have is, there is, other than the bike trail, there's not a lot of place for kids on that corner to play.
Yeah, the clubhouse there, that includes a swimming pool, golf simulator, it has a weight room, has meeting rooms. Those typically, the one in East Troy and the one in McGuanago planned are somewhere around between $500,000 and $1 million facility. They also have tennis courts planned for this, outdoor volleyball, a walking trail. I think we have a dog park in this one, but sometimes they'll have a dog park, depending on what they think the market is looking for at that location. So I know the one they're doing right now in the city of Delavan has a dog park included, which they allowed city residents to also use. So we suspect that most of the recreational facilities will be for the tenants and the people in the facilities, but sometimes they'll open it up the walking tracks and like the dog facility and the one in McGuanago that we got planned now is a big recreational area, big field for that they're going to allow to have some practice for like soccer teams and baseball and stuff. So the way all the Toronto, Tony and Tommy, the two major elements of Toronto Builders are local people that live, develop, build, and maintain and operate the facilities. And the office is right in ours, so if there's ever an issue, these are not out of state people, they're local people, and they have a phone number. And so, we're very proud of the reputation, and that we've got one in Whitewater and East Troy and Beloit right now, so I think it's always been positive.
Thank you. Commission members, any other questions, concerns? Do we have a recommendation to send to council?
I move for approval of the project plan amendment and boundary adjustment for TID 4.
Do we have a motion to approve? Do you have a second?
Second.
What's that? Yeah. We have a motion and a second. Any other further questions or discussion? Roll call, please.
Would it include, I'm sorry, would it include the amendments that Joe had referenced? There were some things that the Joint Review Board wanted included in the plan. Would the motion include those?
Yes.
Or does it need to be included in that?
Needs to be included, correct?
If it's not in the draft.
Yeah, if it's not in the draft. So Jim, could you redo your motion to include the amendments that need to be done from Joint Review Board?
Okay, I move that we approve project plan amendment and boundary adjustments for TID 4 along with the recommendations by the review board.
Thank you. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further questions or discussion? Roll call, please.
Ledke,
Yes.
Hunter, Stocko,
Yes.
Boardman,
Yes.
Giesland,
Yes.
Meinel,
Yes.
Lechner.
Yes. Motion passed. Thank you, Joel and everybody. Next, we have Scott Meisner, MCMAK LLC applicant, Richard Geiser, Max US Operations Agent, 401 East Morrissey Drive, with tax key number YA461700001. We will have public comment on this, but first I'd like to bring them up and give their presentation of what they're planning if they're here and ready to do that. And then we'll open up public comment after that.
Good evening, my name is Jay Knetter with Jack Architects, and we're the architect working on the project. Rick Geiger is president with MaxPax, and owner representative Tom Coleman. So essentially what we have is a west addition. I think 85,000 square feet is really what whatever our expansion says. Okay, yeah, it's 84,900, or call it 84,000. We're expanding the building to the west. This building was originally designed with the expansion in mind. Driven by the site, you'll see that that's basically been prepped as pretty much pad ready. We do have to remove some topsoil. This is an expansion which is obviously predicated on business growth, with the exception of really not employee growth. There's a lot of storage and internal requirements that are necessary here. And this ends up giving MaxPax the opportunity to really focus on their use and needs within the facility. It's basically a split business plan and that was from the start with US Packaging and MaxPax. So this ends up giving them their own separate home. Employees will continue to work and function the same way that they are today. We do give some loading dock access on the south for, I believe it's eight loading dock doors. Essentially, the stormwater management plan has been designed from day one to handle the added impervious that we're going to be encountering with this addition. So I don't want to get long-winded. You can tell me what you're looking for. I'd be happy to answer questions.
Well, if there's questions after the public comment, and commission has any, I'll call you back up.
Okay,
Yeah.
sounds good. Thank you.
Okay. So I'd like to open the public comment for this site plan and architectural review. There is a limit of 2 minutes with public comment. Anybody here for public comment? If you could just come up to the microphone and state your name and address. And
name is John Cook, 418 Grant Street. I live directly across Jackson Creek from the existing building. The issue I have with this expansion is that the existing building right now has some device on the roof that creates a tremendous amount of noise for the entire subdivision at random times for extended periods of time. It prevents us from sleeping. It's so loud that it keeps us from talking in our yards. If this expansion has any additional noise, I would object to the expansion. If the expansion does not have any of the existing noise, if it doesn't increase that, I have no problem with it. I have no problem with the trucks. They do not seem to have a noise impact on our subdivision. But whatever that noise is on the roof is very objectionable. As an engineer, I've dealt with this a lot, and a noise abatement could really help that to direct that sound upwards instead of outwards. Most of the housing in Jackson Creek is level or above that roof line. So anything that's on that roof making noise hits our entire subdivision. That's my comment.
thank you. Anybody else here?
Kind of weird being on this.
I was going to say, you're out in the audience tonight, Gary.
Yeah. Good evening, Alderman Gary Lee Payson Jr., 1201 Hickory Lane. I am 2nd District, so I'm aware of the noise issue. We were actually out there last year, and the fan that's on the corner, which is right, thank you, ma'am, seems to be the issue. I would ask that during the construction, you guys look at changing that, because then all of them are happy, which means I'm not getting those calls, which I will do what I need to do, but we did go out there and look at the property, and that is it. So I would ask that during your construction, look at changing that exhaust fan so it's in a different spot, and then it'll solve the problem. Okay? That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Gary. Anybody else for public comment? I'll ask a second time. Anybody else for public comment? And I'll ask a third time. Anybody here for public comment? I declare this public comment closed on the MaxPac operations, site plan, and architecture review. Allison, do you have anything to add to commission members about either one?
I don't believe I have anything to add other than, they talked about the building addition here. They'll be adding, you can see some additional parking. One thing I'm sure Naomi will touch on a little bit more is they'll be adding an additional egress in the front off Morrissey Drive. One thing we did notice too is that in this plan submittal, they had outlined in the rear of the building a 15,000 square foot future maintenance building addition. Now with that being on this plan here, we did not receive any further detail on that future plan. And because of that, I would recommend that we hold off on approving that 15,000 square foot future building. I did speak with the applicant and they are understanding and agreeable to that. Another reason for me bringing this up is because if it is a future expansion, we do have an ordinance that states all construction needs to be started within 12 months of the approval here today. So if we approve that and they do not build within that 12 months, then they would need to come back to the Plan Commission anyway.
Okay. Thank you, Allison. Naomi?
Yeah, I did a site plan review of the proposed addition. I will agree with the applicant that stormwater has been provided in the existing pond for the amount of impervious that they show on the plan set. This land disturbance is over an acre, so technically a notice of intent from Wisconsin DNR is required. The proposed maintenance, I have a couple comments about the proposed maintenance building. If that's removed from today's submittal, then that satisfies those requirements. In the future, when that comes back, we'll need a grading plan and some more information about the maintenance building and how the stormwater is directed to the existing facility. Additionally, the maintenance building was shown to be fairly close to a delineated wetland, and I made a comment that the wetland delineation may be over 5 years old, which would need to be updated before we could look at the location proposed. Storm sewer sizing, just ask for them to clarify their storm sewer sizes, that they're able to convey the 100-year peak flow rate to the existing detention facility. They're making some changes in their storm sewer plan. And when we had a staff meeting, the fire department had made a comment related to the flows or the pressure available at the fire hydrants, and that they possibly would be looking for a looped water service and additional hydrants around the building. So that would be something that would need to be ironed out with the fire department and added to the plans to meet their flow requirements as necessary for sprinkling of the building. I have some general comments on erosion control, just keeping the site clean, keeping mud and debris off of our public roads. And there is a stormwater maintenance agreement I have in my files. I'm unsure if it's been recorded, but we would want that to be recorded. It was developed in 2016 with that addition. So I will talk about, I don't have it on my comment sheet because there was really no concern of the added ingress egress. This is such a large lot that having more than two seems to make sense. In fact, the emergency personnel like the second entrance because it allows them to loop out instead of backing up if that was not proposed. And there's really nothing on the north side of Morrissey Drive that would be impacted by this new ingress egress. And as you know, it's a dead end, so not a lot of traffic. That's
Okay.
it for me.
Thank you, Naomi.
The only other item I would add that I did forget to mention earlier is that this parcel is zoned two different zoning designations. where they're proposing their 84,000 square foot addition. A small portion of that parcel there is zoned M1, and the rest of the parcel is zoned M2. So I did ask that as a condition, whether we move forward tonight or not, but a condition be that they do come back to the Plan Commission and request a rezone so that the zoning of that parcel is consistent throughout, because it is one facility, one company. I would like to see the zoning be consistent throughout that parcel.
Okay, thank you, Ellison. I guess I have one question for the engineer, if we could. Speaking about the dust collector, since you are gonna build, could that be built inside then? Could it be a room built around it? I'm not sure what kind of dust collector, but would there be any way that you'd be able to put that inside? Like a room or a building that could be built right
Sure.
there around it?
Well, actually, what's happening right now, there are modifications being already underway for the existing dust collector. So we feel pretty confident that we're going to be able to take care of any noise concerns. And of course, our client and owner is well aware of this. So the last thing we want to do is just constantly have these issues. So that's currently underway as well.
Okay. Commission members? Questions, concerns, discussion?
Can I add just one other thing before you go there? We did identify that maintenance building as kind of just a point of master planning, if you will. We just want to make sure that it's understood that there would be, the potential opportunity for them to have this maintenance facility on the outside. And Allison, you and I talked about that. And, we totally understand that we come back with the grading and with all the necessary information. So the intent wasn't really to say, yes, go ahead and build, because there isn't enough there. But as long as we do want to have kind of a comfort level that the commission would be okay with some sort of maintenance facility there.
Ken, were you gonna?
Yeah, Allison, you, in your last comment there, do you recommend that we table this until the rezoning is done and move forward at that time?
I think that it could go either which way. It sounds like we have a few items that we need to hash out. I think we do need to get some clarification and maybe just an updated site plan showing what the fire department is asking. Maybe just the removal of the maintenance building if we aren't moving forward with that tonight. However, if you do, or if you would like to recommend approval of the site plan and architectural review, it would just be my recommendation that you do list them coming back to rezone as a condition of the approval.
I guess if I could add, the rezoning is not something that is really on our shoulders, is it? I think it's a city thing, and I don't know why we have two zones. It's a one CSM. I don't know where that's coming from. So we're happy to come back and go through the rezoning piece of this.
Because it's a property owner, right, Ellison?
Yes, so you would just submit a rezoning application and come back to the Plan Commission for that.
Yeah, and we're certainly happy to do that. With regard to the fire protection and the hydrant comments, we believe we can handle that at a staff level as well. We've actually contacted our fire protection contractor who did the entire building. We have an ESFR fire protection system, okay? And there's concern, a little bit of concern about the actual flow and capacity that we're getting from the city. So there's some things that we're going to have to look at a little bit and make sure that we're good with that. And I think we probably do have to go through some flow tests just to make sure that everything is coming to us. I guess we're kind of surprised that we even have that, but that is something that actually occurred with the initial building. So we're happy to go down that path, and we fully expect that there will be some further dialogue.
Commission members, any other questions?
I just have a question in terms of, you said that this was a storage expansion, not a employment expansion. Are there going to be any new employees or strictly just storage?
There might be a handful, but no, for the most part, it's the space that they really need for the process more than anything. Yeah.
Members?
I would move for approval of the site plan and architecture review as long as they abide by the concerns of the zoning officer and the city engineer.
And how about the fire department? Jim, how about adding the fire department in there too?
And the fire department.
So we have a motion to approve the site plan moving forward with architecture review with recommendations from Allison, Naomi, and Rod, Fire Chief. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further questions or discussion, Plan Commission members? Roll call, please.
Watke?
No.
Hunter?
Yes.
Stockel?
Yes.
Boardman?
Yes.
Geisler?
Yes.
Minell?
Yes.
Lechner?
Yes. Motion passed to move forward with all the recommendations. Next, Anthony A. Coletti, applicant, New Beginnings, APFB Incorporated, owner, 20 North Church, tax key Y0P 00136 and YUNW 00186. We have a zoning text amendment with public hearing recommendation. We also have a conditional use permit, public hearing recommendation. I'm going to refer to our city attorney right now before we start. Yep.
Good evening. My name is Elaine Ekus, and I'm special legal counsel for this particular meeting, I guess. The mayor asked me to address a few different items. Do you want me to kind of go down this? Okay. So I thought it would be really helpful to crystallize in on the couple items that are actually on the agenda, including some recommendations. So on the agenda this evening are two public hearing applications that have been filed by Anthony Coletti as attorney for New Beginnings APFV as the owner of the property at 20 North Church Street. One application is a petition for a zoning text amendment to change the code to allow conditional use in the T1 transition zoning district for ground floor level apartments / dwelling units in conjunction with a business use. The second application is for a conditional use to have the ground floor, a ground level apartments dwelling units. So the first one is for requesting a text amendment. The second one is actually for the conditional use if that text amendment were to be approved. So we have advised the city that the city needs to first consider and make a decision on the zoning text amendment before the city can hold any proceedings on the conditional use application because it is currently not allowed as a conditional use. Essentially, it's a premature application. So what we're recommending is that, before we go into the public hearings, is that the Plan Commission table the conditional use permit public hearing until after the council makes a legislative decision on the zoning text amendment. So before we start the public hearings, we would ask for a Plan Commission member to move to table or postpone the public hearing on the conditional use application until council makes that decision on the zoning text amendment. So that would keep the public hearing here, but it wouldn't happen until a future meeting if and when the council acts on the text amendment, and then only if the text amendment were to be approved. That would provide for that conditional use. So it really is going to stop that part of the process here and hold it. Are there any questions from the Plan Commission members on that recommendation?
Do I have a recommendation?
On the table.
Motion on tabling the
So moved.
tabling the conditional use permit public hearing, correct?
Correct.
We have a motion and a second. Any further questions or discussion on that?
So this will be discussed at the next council meeting then?
No.
Not necessarily. We are recommending that you go forward with the public hearing on the text amendment, and then we have some further recommendations in regards to that as well. So I don't know when the conditional use public hearing would happen, but it would be at some point after we deal with the text amendment at the council level.
Good enough.
Can you give us a ballpark?
No, because that's really up to you guys and the council as decision makers. So it really sort of depends on
It's
this.
not up to us. It's up to the city.
Well, it's right now. Well, right now it's public. The text amendment is a public hearing item in front of the Plan Commission, which ultimately at some point will need to receive a recommendation from this Plan Commission that then would move that decision making up to the council. So I mean, I would expect that would happen over the course of the next few meetings, couple meetings. I don't expect that that's 6 months from now. I expect that that's within the next month or two.
Any other questions, concerns? So we have a motion to table the conditional use public hearing, and we have a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passed on the conditional use permit public hearing and recommendation of table for further meetings.
Okay, so now you have in front of you just the zoning text amendment public hearing, which is proper because the applicant has asked for the city to consider a textual amendment, and your code provides a process for residents and individuals to come forward and ask for that kind of procedure, so it's proper to hold the public hearing on that. So that, again, this public hearing is on the petition requesting that the city make a legislative decision for a zoning text amendment to allow a business use in a T1 transition district to have apartments / dwelling units on the ground floor as a conditional use. That's currently not what our code says. It doesn't allow that as a conditional use or permitted use in your T1 transition zoning district. So that transition zoning district, for background, for purposes of the public as well as the Plan Commission, that district is intended to provide a mixed land use and harmonious building form transition area between the denser commercially oriented central business district and the surrounding predominantly single-family residential districts by allowing for a mix of uses including housing, retail, office, commercial, and civic, which respects the residential character of the surrounding properties. And that statement that I just read is a direct quotation from your code. And it's important to understand that because that is the subject of this public hearing on whether or not you're going to make amendments to that zoning district. After the public hearing is open, it's our recommendation that first you have the zoning administrator address the application briefly, then you ask the applicant to address the application, and then finally you ask the members of the public to speak to the application. Again, it's not the conditional use application, it's whether or not that you think the text of your zoning code should be amended to allow for that type of conditional use. After the public comments are completed, then the Plan Commission would be able to close that public hearing. Do you want me to go into this part yet?
No, let's wait till after.
Okay.
So I will open the public hearing for the zoning, excuse me, zoning text amendment. So I will open the public hearing. Is anybody here for public hearing? You can come up and,
Do you want to hear from the zoning administrator first, and then the applicant?
Should we come up now?
Yeah, is this just?
There's nobody out there.
you the applicant or a member of the public?
I'm applicant.
Applicant, okay. We're going to hear from the, I guess we're going to hear from the zoning.
That's fine.
If you just want to have a seat, thank you.
Yep.
Yeah, there you go.
Okay, so yes, New Beginnings and their representative, Anthony Coletti, has requested a zoning text amendment. Currently, our zoning ordinance states that in the T1 transition district, you are allowed to have dwelling units above a business on a non-ground level. Right now, anything else is not permitted. So dwelling units on a ground level is not a permitted use in the T1 district. Tonight, they are coming forth in front of the Plan Commission to ask that the zoning text be changed to allow ground level dwelling units in the T1 transition district at their location. So I just, I wanted to reiterate that, Elaine had quoted what the T1 transition district stands out or, is defined as in our ordinance section. I also really briefly wanted to touch on what our 2040 land use plan says about the transition district and the future of the city. So the transition district falls under community mixed use in the 2040 land use plan. And that's defined as small businesses that serve the day-to-day convenience, goods, and services needs of nearby households, administrative, professional, and business offices located in immediate proximity to downtown Elkhorn businesses, as well as residential and institutional uses, parks and recreational uses, and places of worship. It is intended to provide a mixed land use and harmonious building form transition area between the denser commercially oriented central business district and the surrounding predominantly single-family residential area by allowing for a mix of uses which respects the residential character of the surrounding properties. Net densities for residential uses within this area should not exceed 16 dwelling units per acre. These uses should be well landscaped to provide a landscaped buffer between low-density residential uses and higher-density uses. So in correlation, I would just recommend that the Plan Commission tonight be thinking of our land use plan as well as the definition of the T1 transition district. And if you believe that the zoning text should indeed be amended to include ground level dwelling units.
Thank you, Ellison. Anthony?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Tony Coletti. I'm with the law office of Anthony Coletti, here with several members of the board for New Beginnings. And we're, of course, asking for this text amendment to facilitate the building plans that, or the change in the building plans that is being discussed in a future occurrence. I think the operative phrase in regards to what we're asking for is in conjunction with the business. We're not asking for carte blanche use for or exceptions for ground floor apartments or dwelling units in a building. We're asking for it to be in conjunction with the business. And I think that would generally limit, first of all, limit the number of type of applications that you get in this particular thing. I don't think you'd be putting a major, setting up a major precedent by doing this. Second of all, I think if you keep the mixture between the business and the dwelling units, you're right in line with the T1 district here, which calls for that kind of a mix of uses within the building and within the neighborhood. Looking forward, I guess what we're suggesting is one of two things. Either that it be amended to say that you can have ground floor or ground level dwelling units in conjunction with the business above the basement, because that's what we're asking for here. There is a basement here, so you could say, could amend it to that, or just amend it to include that the first floor has to be a mixed use of business and residential units. I haven't done a survey of the city, but I don't know if you're going to have that many buildings that are going to have that combination of uses on the ground floor. And to the extent that you do, it's still conditional use. So you have the ability to, some discretion certainly to deny any conditional use requests that come up. And you also have obviously the ability to put conditions on the uses of the buildings that they might arise. So I don't think this is opening the door to a major change in the T1 district or in that neighborhood. I think it just facilitates a couple of small amendments and maybe one or two projects. So on that basis, I guess that's what we're asking for an amendment, and happy to answer any questions you have.
Well, if we do have questions, I'll bring you back up after
thanks.
public hearing. Anybody else here for public hearing? I do have a letter that was sent to all Plan Commission dated on April 25th that just wanted to make sure it's in our packet and everything that it did get entered into the official record for the meeting. It was from Jeffrey J. Robb. It goes through and talks about his letter. Actually, it just says, I'm urging you to vote no. But the letter is available, anybody want to read, but it's just for official record of the meeting, dated April 25th, 2023. So that's the second time. Anybody here for public hearing? And now that's the third time. Anybody here for public hearing? I declare the zoning text amendment public hearing closed. Would you like to proceed?
Okay, so your public hearing has now been closed. If the Plan Commission has any specific questions, certainly now would be the time to ask them. But after discussing this with your zoning administrator prior to the meeting, as well as the city administrator, we are recommending to the Plan Commission that the Plan Commission table or postpone this matter to a date certain, one of your next meeting dates, to allow staff to discuss the information that's been received as a part of the public hearing process, and to be able to make a report to the Plan Commission taking into consideration the purposes and intent of your zoning code, as well as the vision, goals, and objectives of the 2040 land use plan that your zoning administrator pointed out, and then the input that has been received this evening, even if it was just from the applicant. That would allow us to make sure that we're able to provide the proper advice and counsel to the Plan Commission in your legislative decision making. So that would be our recommendation, that you postpone it, whether that be to, I think the next meeting dates are May 18th, which, as I understand it right now, you don't have any specific items of business planned for that meeting. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Or whether you would want to wait and do that at June 1st, sorry.
June 1st.
That would be at your discretion, of course, as a part of making that motion. But before that happens, if there's any questions that the Plan Commission members have for the applicant or for the zoning administrator or for myself or the city administrator, now would be a good time to ask those questions.
So Allison, how many units, so let's say we approve this or whatever, is there a limit on how many ground floor units could go in? Or are we just throwing it wide open that someone could put, in the next applicant could say, well, I'm putting 8 with my business?
Correct. As of right now, the petitioner is requesting more broad zoning text amendment. There would be no requirements. So if you approved this zoning text amendment, that ground floor apartments would be a conditional use in conjunction with a business operation, so essentially a mixed-use building. If you had a lot of space to put in ground-level apartments, there would not be anything in our ordinance that would permit that. However, then they would need to meet all of our conditions listed, so they would still need to meet other requirements of our code, parking, landscaping, all of those sorts of items.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Yeah, I've got a question. I wasn't on this commission when New Beginnings came in the first time for a conditional use. I think it was about 2 years ago. And the board or the council approved their conditional use on 2 conditions, as I understand. One was to get written permission from the neighbor to use the driveway, and 2 was they had to abide by the plans they submitted, as I understand. Am I right or not?
Yes, but the issue...
But the plans that were drawn up by your architect, whoever, showed meeting the requirements for parking stalls, but encroached on the neighbor's property by a few feet, right?
Yeah.
So you couldn't abide by the original plan.
Right, those concerns have been addressed.
Okay. Now, I guess my question is, if conditional use is granted, and not complied with within 12 months, it expires, right?
Correct.
Have they been operating then for a year illegally, or
No,
no?
no,
Okay.
their conditional use to do the apartments was
So my next
expired.
question is, if they couldn't meet the parking stalls and that, now they're gonna put in 2 apartments, which I'm sure our zoning officer is gonna say is gonna require probably 4 more parking stalls.
Well, that's why we're not here to talk about the conditional use permit right now. It's for the
Okay.
zoning text.
All right,
That'll come future if we have to down the road.
I'll make a motion to table the zoning text amendment to the, when's the next meeting? June 1st
June 1st.
or thereafter, so that staff has an opportunity to go through this again and work some of this out possibly with the applicant.
I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second to table the zoning text amendment till June 1st, so staff can look at everything and give us recommendations back to the commission to proceed at that time. Any other questions or discussion? Roll call, please.
Ledke,
Yes.
Hunter,
Yes.
Stocko,
Yes.
Boardman,
yes.
Geisler,
Yes.
Minell,
Yes.
Lechner.
Yes. Motion passed to table the zoning text amendment until June 1st. Next, we have general discussion items. Any updates, Allison?
I don't have anything.
Okay, sounds good. Everything's been going good. Thank you for your updates on the monthly report too.
Yes,
Yeah.
of course.
So
Yeah.
next meeting, we'll have June 1st at 6
You still out
o'clock.
getting them?
Oh,
Do we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Do we have a second? Motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Meeting adjourned. Thank you, everyone.